In a quiet workshop outside Kigali, Rwanda, the hum of sewing machines fills the air. But these aren't just stitches in fabric, they're stitches in healing. This is the story of Clarisse Mukamana, a woman who turned trauma into empowerment, pain into purpose, and a single sewing machine into a thriving business that changed an entire community. Welcome to Focused Finance, where we share real stories of ordinary people creating extraordinary impact. Clarisse grew up in the quiet hills of rural Rwanda, a place where mornings began with birdsong and the smell of wood smoke, where neighbors shared what little they had. But at just 16, that peaceful world vanished. In 1994, during Rwanda's genocide, Clarisse lost everything: her parents, her sister, her home. What followed wasn't just survival, it was silence, grief, and the long ache of trying to understand how life could begin again. She carried scars that no one could see, the kind that time alone can't heal. Yet beneath that pain lived something powerful: determination. Clarisse refused to let tragedy define the rest of her story. She knew she couldn't rebuild the past, but she could help rebuild what came next. Not through grand gestures, but through steady, patient hands and a will to create something meaningful from what remained. Years later, Clarisse found herself standing in a small, sunlit room with two other women from her village. All widows, all survivors, all searching for a way to start again. They didn't have savings or equipment. What they did have was one borrowed sewing machine, a pile of donated fabric, and a shared belief that their hands could still create something beautiful. Each day, they stitched together simple clothes for local families: dresses, shirts, school uniforms. The first garments were uneven, the pay barely enough to buy food, but the work meant more than money. It was a rhythm, a way to quiet the chaos still echoing inside them. They named their group Amahoro Cooperative, the Kinyarwanda word for peace. And in that tiny workshop, peace began to take shape, not as an idea, but as something tangible, sewn into every seam, every color, every new beginning. As the months turned into years, the rhythm of sewing became the rhythm of rebuilding. Word began to spread through nearby villages, not just about the clothes these women made, but about the spirit behind them. Tourists passing through Kigali started buying their handmade dresses and scarves. Local markets began placing small orders. Each week, Clarisse and her team experimented with new patterns, new colors, new confidence. Soon, their once quiet workshop filled with laughter, conversation, and the hum of more sewing machines. What started with 3 women grew to 10, then 20, then 30. But the cooperative wasn't just teaching sewing, so it was teaching strength. Women who had once been silent found their voices again. They were earning their own money, sending their children to school, and proving that resilience could be crafted thread by thread. For Clarisse, every finished garment wasn't just fabric, it was proof that healing could be handmade. By 2010, Clarisse's small cooperative had caught the attention of a local NGO working to support women-led businesses. They saw the passion, the craftsmanship, and the potential. Through training workshops, Clarisse and her team learned how to price their garments, manage finances, and connect with fair trade networks beyond Rwanda. It was the knowledge they'd been missing, the bridge between purpose and prosperity. Soon, their creations were traveling far beyond Kigali's markets, to Europe, to the US, to customers who didn't just see clothes but stories of hope woven into every stitch. With each new order, Clarisse hired more women, expanding the workshop and multiplying its impact. What began as survival had evolved into something extraordinary: a sustainable business built on skill, sisterhood, and second chances. As the cooperative grew, so did its impact. The women who once arrived timid and uncertain now carried themselves with confidence. They weren't just earning money, they were becoming role models, many began mentoring younger girls, teaching them the same skills that had once given them hope. Homes that had once been silent now buzzed with new life. In markets across Kigali, you could spot their bright fabrics, a symbol of self-reliance stitched into every pattern. What started with one sewing machine had become a chain of empowerment. Over 80 women now worked in or with the cooperative, some even launching their own small tailoring shops. Clarisse had set out to rebuild her life, and in the process, she helped rebuild a community. Clarisse's story wasn't built on luck or charity. It worked because she built around purpose. She didn't start with capital. She started with courage. She used what she had where she was. One sewing machine, 2 partners, and an unshakable belief that small hands could make big change. Clarisse reinvested every franc back into her cooperative. Not into possessions, but into people. Each new machine, each new trainee became a thread in a much larger fabric of community growth. And perhaps the greatest reason it worked. She measured success not by profit, but by progress. By the number of women who found confidence, independence, and peace through the work they created together. Her story carries a lesson for all of us. Entrepreneurship isn't just about income. It's about impact. You don't have to wait for perfect timing or big funding. You can begin right where you are with what you know and build something that matters. Because as Clarisse proved, the smallest act of creation can become the greatest act of healing and hope. And when shared, it always multiplies. Today, Clarisse still walks through her workshop each morning, greeting every woman by name. Her story reminds us that financial freedom isn't always about numbers. Sometimes it's about purpose. And that even in the aftermath of loss, one small thread, guided by steady hands, can weave an entirely new beginning. If Clarisse's story inspired you, hit like and subscribe for more focused finance stories. Real people, real impact, real inspiration. Because sometimes the best investment you can make is in hope.